Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Classic Football Review Podcast here on Wearing Number 10. We are live, twitch.tv/Wearing Number 10. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify. If you can listen to us there, watch us there. Our socials, Twitch isn't a social. Twitter is a social. So is Instagram and TikTok. And we're all on all of them at Wearing Number 10. And what an auspicious start that was from me. But the game we're covering today is certainly an auspicious one. And it's in hindsight, it's one of the games that really should have a bigger place in history than it does, even though it is a very notable game. It's Liverpool versus Manchester City in the Premier League, April 13th, 2014 from Anfield. Carl O'Rourke is joining me today. And Carl, this felt like the game of that season. It was certainly built up as the game.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Sean. Good to be here. This was a highs and lows kind of season, I think, for Liverpool in general. The intensity of the game itself, the scoreline, we got plenty of goals on the day. The implications it should have had and could have had won't be forgotten by many. And it was kind of a poignant day as well, kind of falling on the anniversary of the Hillsborough disaster, or in around the anniversary of the Hillsborough disaster. You know, there was a lot of writing on the wall on the day, but strange one.
There was a minute's silence before the game, and that image of just all the flags fluttering in the breeze. There are just massive amounts of flags on the Kop, and they've got their placards that show 25 years, justice for the 96, all those slogans. But the atmosphere was just absolutely nuclear, as you'd expect, both in terms of the historical significance of what happened 25 years previously, and also the fact that this was the game in the title race. I'll compare it to a few things, but it did feel like it would be the game. And there's a specific game I'll compare it to once we get to the end. But first, let's take a check on the teams. And they are very interesting because they're almost like primitive forms of what they'd eventually evolve into, because Liverpool and City, we know now as the two teams in England. But looking at this City team, it felt like they still hadn't quite put the pieces together, even though at the time it looked like a powerhouse. You had Joe Hart, you had Company in defense, Yaya Toure was still there, David Silva, and Dzeko. Sergio Aguero was on the bench. He was carrying an injury, which was actually a theme of the city team at that time. Company wasn't 100% either. And looking at the Liverpool team as well, I'm looking at the midfield three of Philip Coutinho, Steven Gerrard, and Jordan Henderson. And from a modern lens, that looks like a dream of a midfield. It's the sort of thing you'd put up in a dream 11. Steven Gerrard, obviously, the legendary captain, had been captain for almost a decade at this point, and Jordan Henderson would go on to take that mantle and really live up to it. But it felt very much as though this was a team that was ready to win the title. Both of them did.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, as you said, we all saw Man City as a powerhouse around this time. They were the toughest game in anyone's season, no matter who you were. If you're a team like Liverpool at this time, you can put it up to City as much as you can. But I mean, it seemed as formidable as they come. But you look at it now and compare it to the kind of teams they've had over the last 3 or 4 years. You're starting Martin Di Michelis in the centre defence. That is not quite as terrifying as we imagined that City team to be. And I mean, yeah, like you said, Sergio Aguero was carrying a knock in around this time. So, you're still looking at someone like Edin Dzeko, who, we mightn't see as this great striker right now. But at the time, he was well able to bag his goals. On the Liverpool side of things as well, you're looking at a team that was really, really not good very shortly before this time as well. Anywhere between 2010 and 2013, Liverpool are just not a terrifying fixture anymore at this stage. But then they get to this season and it seems to fall into place. Like you said, Steven Gerrard's still holding the fort down in midfield. He's kind of coming towards the end of his physical prowess at this stage, so he's in more of a holding midfield role on the day. And then, like you said, Jordan Henderson is there, who would go on to become a really important piece for Liverpool. He played well that season. I just remember as a fan at the time being like, I wasn't all that keen on Henderson. I still had my doubts when he got, vice captaincy and eventual captaincy at the club. But you go and see what these players have become. Coutinho obviously had a massive role to play this year, like absolutely huge. People talk about the front two or the front three. Coutinho was something else to watch around that time. And obviously looking at an up and coming player at the time in Raheem Sterling, who was just a magnificent link in the attack. And goes without saying, the attack you have that year, Luis Suarez finally getting the service he needs alongside Daniel Sturridge. It was the right competition for, as we said, what now seems like a Man City team that, we remember it as being better than it looks right now, on paper. But really stiff competition team wise.
Both sides were coming into this game with the kind of form that you'd expect from champions. Liverpool had 9 wins in a row. City were unbeaten in their last 10 away games, stretching back to November. And the corresponding fixture in this season took place on St. Stephen's Day. City won that game 2-1. Wasn't without controversy. There was a goal for Liverpool that was deemed offside that wasn't. And Brendan Rodgers let the officials have it after the game and was fined as a result. The story of the beginning of this game, I noticed, was it was Luis Suarez versus Martin Demichelis, and that seems like a one-sided duel on paper. But I think Demichelis was doing a really good job of letting Suarez have it. He had a chunk taken out of him, Suarez, in the first exchange they had, and he did get straight back up, but he gave Demichelis a receipt and got the first yellow of the game, which, for a guy of Suarez's temperament, you don't want to have him booked 5 minutes in. But he made up for it, and he was one of the big reasons for Liverpool taking the lead so early after 6 minutes, although a lot of credit as well has to go to Sterling. He took the pass well from Suarez, and Suarez did really well to hold off not just Demichelis, but Gael Clichy as well, to slide it in for Raheem Sterling. And that this goal by Sterling was kind of like something you'd see on the playground, just jinking this way, that way, just waiting for a bit of space. He made it so that Kompany was standing directly in Joe Hart's line of vision, then he just shifted it to one side, knocked it into an empty net. It was a brilliant goal from Sterling.
Yeah, 100%. And like on Suarez there, as you said, we forget about how, like, apart from that assist, how small of a role he had to play in this game. He was in that kind of mind battle against Martin Demichelis, essentially. Trying to psych him out, and it kind of allowed other players in the team to flourish, to be honest. You see in the lead up to that, I think Suarez goes into it for a 50-50 ball. Ref deems it a foul, but plays advantage. He looks up towards the goal as Suarez would, but he's 35, 40 odd yards out. And you see in the clip of the goal, like, Sterling is on a darting run coming in from the left, while Suarez is on the right. He's pointing. He's like, play it in here, in towards the 18-yard box. Suarez plays an amazing pass, and like you said, it was like Sterling was the really good player as a kid on the playground. It was like, I know this is going in. How do I want to do it? And he does a little dummy on Joe Hart. He starts off on his right foot, kind of looks left, little dance on the spot while he looks towards Sturridge, and then turns on to his right foot and sends it in. 5 or 6 minutes into the game, that's exactly the kind of confidence you need from I think the youngest starter on the team. So yeah, he looked towards the cop, and I feel like watching that day, you could kind of sense that there was, obviously at a club like Liverpool, you're going to get your tourism purchases as regards tickets, and there's going to be international presence in the crowd, but you could sense that this is a Scouse presence. Looking at this game, and the crowd were more invested than you could ever hope for. So that kind of start was an absolute dream.
Yeah, the emotion of the first 6 minutes or so coming, they were still kind of riding away from that moment of silence, and to score so early, it just sent the place into a frenzy. And City really struggled, I think, in this first half to kind of get to grips with the game. Uh, a rare chance they had, Torre had it on the edge of the box, completely shanked it, and ended up injuring his knee in the process. And that was actually pretty much the end for him, because later on he tried to make one of his kind of signature driving runs through the middle, and he kind of just pulled up and had to give a lame pass off to the side, and that was his game done then and there. And people may forget this just because how ridiculously deep the Man City squad is now, but how important was Yaya Toure to that team?
Oh, listen, even as a fan of an opposing team, he was incredible to watch at his peak. If I'm not mistaken, this is around the time where he's winning, I think, 3 or 4 African Player of the Year awards on the bounce. Like that's there's always fantastic African players floating around the league. So to be on that top for that long, um, he was a formidable guy to come up against. Whether it's a case of him going forward and getting a nice cross in, or getting a nice shot in on goal, testing the keeper, or whether it's him showing off his kind of that bit of industry he has about him, and being in the middle of the park, and stopping your attack. He's a terrifying player to come up against, and yeah, losing a player like him 20 minutes in against your title rivals is not where you want to be. Um, so I was certainly licking my lips in anticipation when I saw that. I was like, okay, their main leader in the middle of the park is gone. Obviously they still have their captain company on the pitch, but my God, if you can see Yaya Toure out of the game, that's advantage Liverpool when they're a goal up.
And you could tell that Yavi Garcia, who came on for him, was really struggling to fill that same gap. And the City defense was just being pulled this way and that. Liverpool were having all the great attack and play. Sturridge had a really poor miss, I think, from a Sterling cross. Later on, Liverpool had a corner, and it was almost comical going back and watching it, because Steven Gerrard was just on his own in the box, and beforehand, everyone was just kind of pointing at each other, say, "Yeah, who's picking up Gerrard? Who's picking up Gerrard?" And no one did anything, and he was completely on his own on the penalty spot. And afterwards, they just started pointing at each other again. Who was supposed to pick up Gerrard? So Gerrard didn't get his goal. What a moment that would have been for Gerrard to get a goal on this day. But he had to be content with an assist, because that free header of his drew a save from Hart, corner from the other side. Skirtle broke free of the attentions of company, and it looked like Hart was waiting to come into the crowd to punch it away, and he just couldn't get back on his line in time. But 2-0 Liverpool.
Yeah, definitely. With that Gerrard chance prior to this, that was almost the beauty of Gerrard dropping back into a holding midfield role. And when he was playing in a sort of number 10 role, or if he was on the right wing, you generally knew who was picking him up depending on which side of the pitch he was on. Um, but yeah, with him playing holding midfield, getting forward for a bit of an attack, the liability is kind of up in the air as regards the Man City defense. But yeah, you look at the corner, and it wasn't long after this where Liverpool were notorious for conceding from corners and being terrible at scoring from them, and all set plays for that matter. So to see this in action in 2014 was nicely drawn up. So what you had was yeah, Gerrard's about to swing it in, as he said. Skirtle is ready to break away from company. Before this, at a corner you usually have like your nearest player to the corner, if you're taking it, is generally someone smaller in case the cross drops a little bit short. They might go and pick it up and try and revive the attack some way. What happens was Coutinho was that player, and just as Gerrard puts his arms up to indicate that he's going to take the corner, he runs back, and that allows Skirtle to push out and try and get a nick on it and just face it towards goal. And he did. He scored plenty of those in his day. He was pretty good guy to send up for a corner or a set piece. And it was a nice moment as well. Like as a Liverpool fan, you're watching Gerrard and Skirtle play together since maybe 2008. So, it seemed like there was no way, nowhere they were going to lose grip of this after those two guys got going, because obviously you have such a great attack already that you've built over the last couple of years, but then your veterans are performing as well. That's as much as you can ask for.
It really did feel like City were going to get blown away by this at this stage. It felt like it was Liverpool's day, but City managed to hang on long enough for a big penalty shout late on in the first half. And Sacco went in for the tackle. He didn't get the ball at all, but he didn't get Dzeko either. But on the kind of follow through, Dzeko kind of tripped over his torso and went flying. Not enough in it for me. I don't know about you.
Well, at the time I was certainly showing a bit of bias. So, yeah, I'm looking back on it and I'm thinking, Mamadou Sakho, he was a good physical defender. He ended up kind of falling out of the team in the end. He was a good physical defender when it came to a tough striker like Edin Dzeko, who, as someone watching, you're kind of thinking, okay, it's Dzeko going down. He's not going down without a fight, or maybe he's just trying to get inside the head of Mamadou Sakho. So yeah, for me there wasn't enough in it, but you could see the frustrations starting to build up in City's team, particularly the attack, because they weren't getting as much. They really had their work cut out from them essentially. But yeah, nice little bit of a scare to ramp up the blood pressure at the time.
And if you want to talk about a scare, there was a corner laid on, which Mignolet flapped at and kind of drove it back towards his own goal to the point that it had to be headed off the line twice in a row. He'd previously kicked a clearance off a City player and out for a corner, but he did manage to redeem himself late on with a really good save of a Fernandinho half volley. Looking back on Simon Mignolet in goal, I mean, I know Liverpool have a great goalkeeper now, a truly world-class goalkeeper in Alisson, but was it kind of apparent that Mignolet was not quite on that level? I'm not going to call him bad, but he didn't, in hindsight, he certainly wasn't that guy.
Yeah, what you said there is pretty much the story of Mignolet's time at Liverpool. Was he'll save a surefire volley off of a class player on a class team. He'll save something from going in the top corner. Really show his money's worth. But then, he'll get a fundamental wrong. The ball will come to his feet and he will kick it out for a throw in instead of to one of his own players, or he will absolutely scuff a clearance and hit it off the opposition. Like, such was life at the time, basically, watching this guy in goal for Liverpool. It didn't feel like as much of an Achilles heel at the time on this particular team. Obviously, you get to the 14-15 and 15-16 seasons, and it's just constant heart palpitations, really, with this guy. So, it was tough to find the balance, and you didn't blame the club for moving on to another keeper in the end. But in the 13-14 season, it wasn't. It was a fair bit more bearable than it ended up being. And we're talking about a guy as well who, on his Liverpool debut, saved a penalty, like in his first league game at Anfield against, I believe it was Sunderland. Could have been Stoke either, I'm not sure, but yeah, you always knew he had it in him, but like it was never plain sailing with him.
You made it to halftime with your 2-0 lead intact. And at halftime, I think it's as good a time as any to just take a break and ask you who's listening or watching. If you're listening to us on Spotify, make sure to leave a review of the show. Now, some might ask, what's the significance of that? If you leave a review and it's a good review, it kind of instantly just raises the profile of this podcast. We get pushed that little bit higher in search engines. Say it's the same thing you hear with people on YouTube asking to like, comment, subscribe, share. It just gets the word out about the show a bit more. And speaking of which, we are on YouTube, so please do like, comment, subscribe, share, all that stuff. It just pushes the show forward a little more. If you like what we're doing, it means more people get to see it, and it's just beneficial for us in the long run. So any sort of review, positive review, or like or subscribe or whatever it is, it really helps us. We would be really appreciative of that. They said they being the commentary. Actually, I've almost forgot to mention this. The commentary was Martin Tyler and Gary Neville. Martin Tyler, obviously, he gets all the big games, and he's been around longer than most of us have been alive. But Gary Neville, initially, I thought was an odd choice as the co-commentator because Mister Man United calling a Liverpool versus City game, and I was wondering where Jamie Carragher was. It turns out he was actually one of the pundits in the studio. But I've gotten used to, for example, when Liverpool play United, they have a 3-man commentary team of Martin Tyler and Neville and Carragher are both there. This was, I think, Carragher's first season with Sky Sports. He and Neville had formed a bit of a rapport that had made Monday Night Football pretty much appointment television for football fans. But I was a little bit surprised that Carragher wasn't in the booth for this one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly used to it now when it comes to whether it's United against Liverpool, City against United, or Liverpool against City. The dynamic of the three of them kind of works well, to be honest. They still, I feel like, had a big game feel. A lot of us Liverpool fans reckon that this is the last time Martin Tyler got excited about a Liverpool goal because notoriously, whenever Liverpool score even the most cracking of goals, he's just very, very understated. Doesn't really make a big deal of it until it's a goal for someone else, like a Chelsea or a Man United, and then he goes crazy. But no, look at like this season was the most exciting one in a couple of years for broadcasters, I would say. So they brought across the big game feel with Martin Tyler and Gary Neville. Yeah, I always felt like when it was Liverpool and City tussling for the top spots in the league. Honestly, Gary Neville, like really great broadcaster, great commentator, great pundit. Have a lot of time for him on Sky Sports, if I'm honest. Despite any feelings I would have had towards him previously. So yeah, I didn't find much issue with it in this game. But yeah, maybe little Jamie Carragher there would have spiced it up a bit.
That sidebar about the commentary aside, they did mention that Liverpool were a first half team and that City were a second half team. And oh boy, did it show in this second half for the majority of it anyway. Skirtle had to dispossess Fernandinho on the edge of the box about 5 minutes in, and that's really set the stage for things to come. Although Liverpool did get down the other end, and Suarez and Dimichelis were at it again. Suarez, when looking for a penalty, there wasn't any contact. It was a dive, and so he was very, very fortunate, I think, to avoid a second yellow card. But yeah, I know you've got a bit of a Liverpool bias, but under normal circumstances, and if the game wasn't as highly charged as it was and as significant as it was, I don't think he would have lasted.
Certainly wouldn't last in today's game, to be honest. That I feel like it's always been the case that a referee will kind of see a head to head like that and just kind of earmark it for themselves. Be like, okay, I need to keep an eye on this. He'll say it to his assistants as well. Um, but yeah, this was the caveat of having a phenomenal player like Luis Suarez on your team. You know, there's going to be those moments where he doesn't shed the best of light on himself. Like this one, this sort of tussle with De Michelis. It's hard to know. I don't know. I'm a big advocate as well of in a game like this, um, let the players fight. Not literally fight, but
Yeah.
fight for your points. At this stage of the season, um, like obviously some punishments are justified, like the red card that I'm sure we'll get to later. Always justify something like that, but two players trying to feel things out and get a sense of what they're at. I mean, I was definitely there for it at the time. Letting them kind of show each other who's boss essentially. But he probably was a lucky boy to stay on the pitch.
And this was one of the few sojourns into the City box that Liverpool had, because all of a sudden David Silva starts running the show. He'd put the ball in the net um, before he actually scored, but Milner had just let the ball run too far. It went out of play. But this time, Milner did get it right. He linked up well with Fernandinho, put it on the plate for Silva. Suddenly, Liverpool on the rocks. Suddenly, Silva starts running the show. And at the time, I felt like Silva sometimes didn't catch my eye as much as other players did, because all the talk was about Aguero and Yaya Toure winning all these African Player of the Year awards, as you mentioned, and Company, the rock at the back. But Silva, with all three of those guys being varying degrees of injured, it was up to him to kind of start running the show, and he delivered big time. This was his second half.
Yeah, I just feel like I have these constant memories of that season and I think the season after. Just match of the day. I'd watch it on a Sunday. Just they do a recap of the whole weekend, and there was a run of several consecutive weeks, including the week where this game took place, where David Silva was just constantly brought up as this absolute chess piece that they could stick into. He'd float between the attack and the midfield. He'd allow players to link up, and his link up play would allow the likes of wingers or fullbacks to get further down the pitch. And that play with Milner was phenomenal with Fernandinho as well. That was the kind of I feel like that was the kind of silkiness that someone like Silva in your midfield would bring, creating space for players. So yeah, James Milner just torches the Liverpool defense for that first City goal, which obviously is hilarious now. Um, seeing him play for someone like City, it just doesn't seem right all of a sudden. But people underestimate how much of a great piece he was for them. So yeah, he tears it up. He has a nice bit of link up play there, sends it inside. All of a sudden, the ball is in the net. So that's just how quickly this City team could get to you. That's how quickly they could carve you open. And I just feel like this has happened before, where Liverpool take a 2 or 3 goal lead in the game against City. City will get 1 goal back and just be like, oh, game on straight away. No question. That's just the quality that these guys boasted.
And the speed and the extent to which Liverpool started to really wobble it must have been alarming for all Liverpool fans. Skirtle terribly miskicked a clearance and had to be bailed out by Gerrard. Silva nearly teed up Dzeko. His studs were too short to reach it. But the equaliser did come. Again, it was set up by Silva. He just teased Glenn Johnson so much, and the cross came off Johnson's knee. Nothing Mignolet could do about it. Interesting enough, for each of the 3 goals before this, they put up a graphic saying it was their 7th league goal of the season. So it was Sterling's 7th. It was Skirtle's 7th. That shocked me. and it was Silva's seventh as well. It wasn't Glenn Johnson's seventh own goal of the season because something must have gone very wrong for that to happen. But it did feel like it was going to be curtains for Liverpool. Sturridge came off at this point. Henderson had a very loose pass that Dzeko really should have capitalized on. He drove it straight at Mignolet. And a little bit later on, Sergio Aguero comes on. And even though he was carrying a bit of an injury, I'd say the last thing Liverpool wanted to see was Sergio Aguero coming on with the game in the melting pot.
Yeah, definitely, because like you said, there was all those missed chances in the lead up to him coming on, and shortly after him coming on, and you don't really win a game like this with a team like this without a little bit of luck. That like Liverpool at their best were formidable with this team, but any faltering at all was just devastating for them. If you have your centre halves like Martin Skirtle didn't stick around too long after this season. He starts to falter a little bit, and you're thinking, right, this is clearly the weakest part of this Liverpool team is the defense. And that's shown by the table around this time. They ended up conceding 50 goals that season. People talked about how much they scored. They scored over 100 goals. Conceding 50 goals, ridiculous. When you're where you are on the table and when you've won 9 on the bounce. Yeah, so the signs were there. Then obviously, like you said, you see Aguero coming on. Your head is in your hands. You're thinking, right, that's we're gonna need 1 or 2 more goals. Simple as that. With like however many they can stick past us, we could end up needing 2 goals here.
Yeah, I'm just looking here because I like to write down all some of the things that the commentary say because they come up with all sorts of great stats. I think Martin Tyler said that City hadn't done the double over Liverpool since 1937, which was the year they won their first league title. They hadn't done it up to this point, and spoiler alert for the end of this game, they still haven't done it since then. Liverpool had they did start to come back into the game a bit. They had a couple of attacks ruled offside, one of which ruled out a Suarez goal. But they eventually did get their third goal. And do you want to take this one?
Yeah, this is just hard encoded into my brain. Like this entire moment, I won't forget it. This is a Sunday afternoon, I believe,
Yeah.
and um, so what am 2014? I'm 16. I'm pretty sure, or I'm about to turn 17, and yeah, we didn't have Sky or anything in the house, so I had to go all sorts of ways, jumping through hoops on the worst, most dinosaur PC you've ever seen, trying to get my eyes on this game. This was the big one. We didn't have Sky, but we did have LFC TV, and I was down in my room. My dad, also a Liverpool fan, was down in the sitting room. My stream through all the hoops I jumped through was maybe 90 seconds, 2 minutes behind what he was seeing on LFC TV, which was just a camera shot of the crowd and live commentary with the score on the screen. And he decides to reserve himself going nuts over this goal going in to allow me to enjoy it down in my bedroom. And he just hears these wails and screams and like me just banging my fist off my door, just like going nuts over this. So there's a throw in, I believe, and I think it's Gail Clichy goes up to try and head this throw away. It's 2-2. They've locked horns. Like just over 10 minutes left. Clichy goes to nip it away, and then Vincent Company, Mister Reliable, Mister Manchester City. He'll have a statue outside the stadium if he doesn't already, and he just absolutely scuffs this volleyed clearance that he attempts, and the ball breaks loose. All of a sudden, it's kind of just inside the 18-yard box or in around the 18-yard box, and my eyes are scrambling to see whose foot is going to fall on this golden opportunity of a loose ball, and it's not Suarez because he was up towards where the throw-in was being taken, trying to get his feet at the ball, and obviously he can work magic with the ball at his feet. It's not Sturridge at this stage. No, Philippe Coutinho. Why not? Just head down, big follow through on the shot, just nails it into the bottom right corner. Joe Hart makes a really good attempt at trying to keep it out as well. We forget how good Joe Hart was around this time. And yeah, shot goes in. Like you can feel the vibrations from Anfield that day. It was crazy. And Coutinho runs off into the distance. And yeah, things die down. You're kind of looking in disbelief at Vincent Company. You're thinking, how is it him that makes this mistake? You've got Gail Clichy and Martin Demichelis in defence, and no, it was Vincent Company gifted this goal to Liverpool. I mean, like Gary Neville said in the commentary, you take nothing away from that finish, because yeah, it's just absolutely textbook. What you're told to do when that kind of a ball comes towards you, you get your head down, you don't lean back, you just drill that in towards the goal and hope for the best. And yeah, that was a stressful 10 minutes thereafter, trying to hang on to that lead, and yeah, just trying not to burst into tears at the actual possibility that this could end with another City goal. But yeah, what a moment! What a serious moment for the team and for the club.
I did forget that there were 12 minutes left because it had all the makings of one of those classic last minute winners. But yeah, they did have another 12 minutes that they needed to see out. The closest City came after that was oh, I know this was it was a City chance. Johnson headed a corner straight up into the air, and Mignolet just had to scramble to punch it away. But they did get over the line, their 10th win in a row. And I said I was going to compare it to a game later on. I didn't want to talk about it until this point, but this did feel like way back in the day, the very first Premier League season, Manchester United versus Sheffield Wednesday, where United were 1-0 down for vast swathes of the game. And then Steve Bruce showed up with two headed goals in the last 10 minutes to win the game for United. And it wasn't a game that was going to win them the title because there were still 5, 6, something like that games left to go. But the whole atmosphere of it felt like this is the sign that this is going to be the year for Manchester United after 26 years without winning it. And that felt like this day for Liverpool. On the anniversary of Hillsborough, they exploded out of the blocks. They'd had to overcome adversity. They won it in very dramatic fashion. And it felt like one of the games that you have to be champions to win those games. And looking at the table, it really did feel like that, because at this point, Liverpool are 2 points clear. They were 5 at that stage, but Chelsea would win later in the day to close the gap back to 2. But City are 7 behind, albeit with 2 games in hand. But Liverpool very much have their destiny, in their own hands. And everyone knows it. I have a quote here from Guy Mowbray, who's the Match of the Day commentator. What a result for Liverpool. Drama like nowhere else. You'd almost think that this was the day the title was decided. And obviously, the emotion was pouring out of Steven Gerrard. And you have the famous moment where they're all in a huddle and Gerrard saying, this doesn't slip now. This doesn't slip now. We go to Norwich. We get the result, which they would. They did a number on Norwich, as Liverpool and Suarez in particular always seem to do. And Chelsea and City would actually slip up that next week, and which you felt like even more like this was going to be it for them. But alas, it wasn't. We're going to talk about the Chelsea game here because, spoiler alert, it's not getting its own episode. Had Gerrard been booked on this day, he would have missed that Chelsea game. Henderson, as you mentioned earlier, was sent off for a horrendous challenge on Nasri very late on. He did miss this game. And Gerrard slipped. He was the guy who said this does not slip, and he slipped. He actually made two mistakes in that moment against Chelsea. He miscontrolled the pass, letting it go underneath his studs, and then when he tried to recover, his feet suddenly went out from underneath them. And a striker like Demba Ba doesn't need another invitation. And after this goal went in, and after the second goal went in late on in that second half, because Liverpool would lose this game 2-0, the fans, the singing of "You'll Never Walk Alone," I'm sure the Liverpool fans felt like they were just trying to raise up their team. But particularly after that second goal, it sounded like the Strains were getting desperate. It was desperate singing, just almost trying to will a recovery into existence, because this was the moment that Liverpool lost the initiative. And I mean, we've seen teams lose leads before. We've seen Newcastle lose a lead in '96. United, the perennial closers of titles, they lost an 8-point lead in 2012. What was it like?
Horrendous. Yeah, really bad. Um, like you say, you're coming off that you're coming off that City victory, which was like, the reason that was so emotional. People get on their cases for getting that emotional. That's the biggest hurdle. Like, of course you're going to get emotional. I don't have one bit of blame for the players and behaving in the way that they did. Steven Gerrard giving that speech in a huddle. Obviously, the irony exists now and is a nice little point and laugh, or it's a cheap point and laugh for other fans or whatever. But you're looking at a you know slightly an above average team, not a great team. They played well as a team. They were great, but you look back now and on paper you're like how did they mount this charge? This is ridiculous. Um, okay, you lose Henderson. There's one piece gone. That's okay. You could lose worse pieces than Jordan Henderson. At this stage in his career, you go to Norwich. As you say, get your results. Norwich was just like those games were a playground for Luis Suarez at this stage in his career. But yeah, then you go to the Chelsea game, and what an absolute masterclass from somebody who had next to nothing to play for, and Jose Mourinho. Just that wasn't lost to me at the time. I was like, trust this guy to just like serve no purpose but to spoil the party. Like, that's that's kind of what he did. Whether it was for the gain of his own team or whether he just wanted, to go out and give a great performance in a Mourinho fashion. He came out to spoil the party, and he did it well. Liverpool were bad that day. Um, despite Chelsea playing as conservatively and as defensively as one possibly could. Um, that was the day of exposure. Like you said, the fans, kept their singing voices up. I don't think that was an effort to will the team on, really. I think they knew it was lost, given how the game had gone. Um, the Liverpool fans are just like that, and that they'll show their support. They won't give up too easily on the team insofar as like, right, we're still here. We still love this club. Um, so yeah, not so much cries of desperation, but hopelessness, I would say, from the crowd that day. It was very surreal. Um, just seeing obviously Gerrard make his mistake, which look like it hurt for 2 or 3 years after that, like just as much as it did on the day. Obviously, I think Liverpool fans can safely say we've recovered, given the success that was found in the years gone by after that. But the Chelsea game happened. The game after that, I found equally, maybe more frustrating, because after that City game, the big thing was, okay, they've put it firmly in their hands, their own their destiny lies with them. That's fine. I can take that. Um, they obviously get the result in Norwich. That's great. Chelsea, right? That's not so much in our hands now. Let's see what we can do. We're away at Palace. Let's go for it. And I remember we got I think it was the first goal of Palace was scored by Daniel Sturridge, and I just have this really vivid memory again watching on that dinosaur PC. Just goal goes in and Sturridge chases the ball. Liverpool basically needed to improve the goal difference at this stage. Grabs the ball out of the net, and I just remember the commentator being like, "Liverpool have work to do," and you know, they just blow a lead in the most spectacular of fashions. Brought the fans and the team back down to earth, exposing any shortcomings they may have, as if they weren't already desperately down about it after the Chelsea game. Um, so yeah, it was just the strangest turn of events. I had kind of dipped out of football for a while before this season. Kind of got back into it, started the season. All of a sudden, Liverpool are mounting the most unlikely title charge. Um, and yeah, it was pretty much as tough as it got for me as a fan. Obviously I supported the club while they had really, really, really bad teams. Like I mentioned, the 2011, 2010, 2012,
I
in
actually have
around
it
there.
here. They finished second in 2009, but after that,
Yes.
in between that
Mhm.
season and the season we're talking about, seventh, sixth, eighth, seventh.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's like a stray League Cup win sitting there in 2012 against Birmingham City, and they made hard work of it. Um, so yeah, those finishes tell you the story. Obviously, it was Rafa Benitez took them to second in 2009. Gets, I think, a season and a bit after that, gets sacked. Roy Hodgson comes in. That's an absolute disaster. Kenny Dalglish comes in for a year. Oh, cool. Okay, League Cup. That's whatever. That's fine. Got to the FA Cup final and lost that year as well. Um, then Brendan Rodgers comes in. You're like, okay, I see. We've got the Swansea manager to come in and manage us. That's okay. We'll deal with it. It's fine. Then they put this season together, and you're like, right, um, this isn't all bad. And then yeah, obviously they blow it towards the end. Um, and then the seasons following that under Rodgers just weren't at the races at all. They became a handy few points for mid-table teams. Crystal Palace out of nowhere became a bogey team for Liverpool. Like just yeah, it was a
Was it that
strange
next season
time.
that they ruined Steven Gerrard's retirement party?
Yeah, they ruined the party at home. They beat Liverpool 3-1 in his last game at Anfield. And the following game, they went to Stoke and got hammered 6-1 with Gerrard playing up front. It was 6-0, I believe.
Yeah,
And the ball breaks towards Gerrard's, and the centre halves don't bother going towards him. They're like, it's his last game. It's Steven Gerrard.
have your
Let's,
goal.
yeah, give him the goal, like, which was, sound. That's great. But, having an event like that spoiled by how mid this team was around the time was pretty staggering. Then obviously things came good in the end. That was fine, but yeah, you work your way back to this 13-14 season, and the absolute the signs of quality that were there. Signs that you know the boardroom in the club might be doing something right. That's okay. We're going in that direction. But then, as much as anything, from a fan point of view, this just started a phenomenal rivalry between Liverpool and Man City. Like every 1 in 4 or 5 games between the two of them, you get one that's a bit of a snooze fest. But my God, the games that these two teams put on since this day, including this day, monumental. You think about even the League Cup final, the year after this in 2015-16, or the couple of seasons after. Um, that was a phenomenal game. City eventually took it on penalties. You think of when Klopp took over, Coutinho, Mane, and Firmino just take over the Etihad for a couple of games, and Then Liverpool and City have that 4-3 at Anfield. They had the Champions League games in 17, 18, or yeah, I want to say
Yeah, I think
17,
it
18.
was.
So like I feel like the wider audience may have benefited from in a weird way from this season and this game.
Well, it was a brilliant game from a neutral perspective, and you mentioned the Crystal Palace game. Hopefully, we'll be able to cover that on a future episode of the show. But we're going to wrap up this episode of the show. Carl, thank you so much for coming on.
No problem. Thanks for having me. Reliving the
We'll be
pain.
having this episode up on YouTube and Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube and Spotify, hello, thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, tell us what you think of the game. What are your memories of the game? If you're listening to us on Spotify, leave us a review. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at wearing number 10. You can follow us there. I've been Sean Breslin. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.